Today we're going to explore the idea of automating the law, but we're going to look at it through a really unique lens, a perspective from way back in 1991. This was long before AI was the headline-grabbing topic it is today, and what you'll find is that the foundational principles from that era are frankly more relevant now than ever.
So, our guide for this exploration is the pioneering work of Professor Kiskinov, specifically his 1991 book, Legal Informatics. It's a text that lays out a framework for thinking about technology in the legal world, and it raises questions that we are still grappling with today.
All right, so here's our roadmap for our discussion. First, we'll establish why automation was seen as necessary in the first place. Then we'll dig into its scope and its limits. After that, we'll introduce a really crucial idea, the two levels of knowledge. And finally, we'll pull it all together to define the true role of automation in the legal world, just as it was laid out back then.
So let's jump right in with that fundamental question: why is automation even necessary? What was the problem that technology was being brought in to solve?
You know, it's really important to frame this correctly. This wasn't about making things a little easier or more convenient. Automation was a direct response to a very real and growing crisis in managing information. So what exactly were the pressures that made this change so essential?
What's so striking when you look at these reasons is how modern they feel. First, you have the sheer volume of legal information just exploding. Statutes, case law, regulations. It was becoming an avalanche. This, of course, made legal research incredibly complex. Lawyers and judges needed to get to the right data fast, and they needed to trust it. And it wasn't just about finding things. It was about analyzing them, seeing patterns that you just couldn't spot with the naked eye.
And that brings us to the real heart of the issue. Okay, so we agree that automation is necessary. The next logical step is to ask, what are the boundaries? How far can we take this? And maybe more importantly, how far should we take this?
This right here is the critical pivot in thinking. The debate isn't about whether we should automate. That train has already left the station. The much more intelligent question is about what we automate. The real work is in figuring out which tasks are a good fit for a machine and which tasks must and should remain deeply human.
So to answer that question of what, Professor Kiskinov gives us this incredibly useful framework. It's the idea that there are two very distinct levels of knowledge. And understanding this difference is the absolute key to figuring out technology's proper place in the legal world.
Now, before we get to those two levels, we need to quickly touch on this term, formalization. It might sound academic, but it's a simple idea. It just means structuring information and rules in a way that a logical machine, a computer, can actually work with them. If you can break a task down into a clear set of steps and rules, you can formalize it.
And this is where that idea really comes to life. Look at the two sides here. On the left, you've got the human domain, what we call non-formalizable knowledge. This is things like moral judgment, figuring out the spirit or the intent of a law, creating new laws, and of course, making the final call. This stuff requires empathy, values, and context. Then on the right, you have the machine's domain, the formalizable stuff. And this is where computers are just brilliant, retrieving data, comparing texts, organizing massive amounts of information. They're built for this.
Professor Kiskinov essentially frames this as two buckets. You've got the first level, the non-formalizable knowledge that's uniquely human. And then you have the second level, the formalizable knowledge, which is basically everything else that can be structured for a machine to process.
So, once you have this clear framework in mind, defining the proper role for an automated system in law becomes a whole lot easier.
The conclusion really is inescapable. A computer's role is to supplement, not to be independent. It's designed to function as an incredibly powerful tool that serves the legal professional.
This workflow shows you what that ideal partnership looks like. And notice, it starts and it ends with a human. In step one, a human expert defines the problem. That's the non-formalizable part. Then, in step two, the machine takes over and does all the heavy lifting, all that formalizable data processing. But then, for the most important part, step three, it all comes back to the human expert, who uses their non-formalizable wisdom to look at that information and make the final judgment.
A simple analogy really makes this crystal clear. An automated system can be the perfect legal clerk. It can find every single precedent, cross-reference every statute, organize everything flawlessly and at lightning speed. It's perfect for that role. But it can't be the judge. The judge has to weigh evidence, understand human context, and ultimately render a just decision.
So ultimately, the purpose of this kind of technology isn't to replace legal professionals. It's to empower them. It's about augmenting human reason, freeing people up from all the tedious, formalizable work so they can focus on the complex, nuanced thinking that only a human mind can do.
And this brings us right back to our world today. These principles, laid out all the way back in 1991, serve as a vital guide for the challenges we're facing right now with advanced AI. The fundamental question hasn't changed, and it's one we have to keep asking ourselves. As our tools get more and more powerful, how do we make sure that we're designing systems that empower justice while always preserving its essential human element?